Staff Sergeant Maria Elena Rodriguez had always been different from other children in her small Texas border town. While her classmates played with dolls and dreamed of becoming teachers or nurses, Maria spent her afternoons helping her grandfather repair old cars in his dusty garage. Her hands, small but strong, could work a wrench with the precision of someone twice her age. Her grandfather, a veteran of the Korean War, would tell her stories of courage and sacrifice while they worked side by side under the hood of a broken-down pickup truck. "Mija," he would say, wiping grease from his weathered hands. "Strength isn't about how much you can lift. It's about how much you can carry when others can't carry anymore." Those words would echo in Maria's mind throughout her life, shaping the woman she would become. Maria's path to the Marines wasn't typical. She had planned to study mechanical engineering at the state university. But when her father lost his job at the local plant, and her mother fell ill, college became an impossible dream. The family needed income, and they needed it fast. At 18, Maria walked into the Marine Corps recruiting station in San Antonio, with determination burning in her dark eyes. Gunnery Sergeant Williams, a tall man with kind eyes and a no-nonsense demeanor, looked up from his desk as Maria entered. She was small, maybe 5 feet 4 inches, but she carried herself with a confidence that caught his attention immediately. "I want to serve my country," Maria told him without hesitation. "And I want to learn skills that will help me take care of my family." The recruiting process revealed Maria's exceptional aptitude for mechanics and logistics. Her test scores were impressive. But more importantly, her interviews showed a young woman with an unshakable moral compass and a fierce loyalty to those she cared about. When she raised her right hand to take the oath of enlistment, tears streamed down her mother's face from her wheelchair in the audience. Boot camp at Paris Island was brutal, but Maria thrived. She wasn't the fastest runner or the strongest recruit, but she never gave up. When other recruits struggled with their gear, Maria helped them. When someone fell behind during long marches, she found ways to motivate them to keep going. Her drill instructors noticed her natural leadership abilities and her talent for bringing out the best in others. After graduating as an honor recruit, Maria was assigned to motor transport operations. She quickly proved herself as both a skilled mechanic and a natural leader. Her small hands could reach places in engine compartments that others couldn't access, and her analytical mind could diagnose problems that stumped more experienced Marines. But it was her ability to keep morale high during difficult times that truly set her apart. During her first deployment to Afghanistan, Maria's convoy team became known for their reliability and their tight bond. She had a gift for reading people, knowing exactly when someone needed encouragement and when they needed to be pushed harder. Lance Corporal Johnson, a 19-year-old from Detroit who struggled with homesickness, found in Maria a mentor who helped him find his confidence. Corporal Davis, a seasoned Marine dealing with family problems back home, appreciated Maria's listening ear and practical advice. Rodriguez has something special, her commanding officer, Captain Martinez, noted in her fitness report. She leads by example and inspires others to exceed their own expectations. She's the kind of Marine who makes everyone around her better. Maria's second deployment took her team to a remote outpost in Helmand Province. The base was small and understaffed, supporting several hundred Marines and soldiers in a region known for frequent attacks. The motor pool was Maria's domain, and she ran it with the efficiency of a Swiss watch. Every vehicle that left the base was in perfect mechanical condition. Because Maria knew that a broken-down truck in hostile territory could mean the difference between life and death for her fellow Marines. The work was demanding, often requiring 18-hour days in scorching heat. Maria's team worked on everything from armored trucks to generators, ensuring that the base remained operational despite constant threats. She treated every repair job as a mission-critical task, because in her mind, it was. The communication equipment that kept them connected to headquarters, the vehicles that carried supplies to remote positions, the generators that powered their defenses, all of it had to work perfectly. As weeks turned to months, Maria's reputation grew throughout the base. She wasn't just the mechanic who could fix anything. She was the Marine who never let her team down. When young Marines felt overwhelmed by the stress of combat deployment, They sought out Staff Sergeant Rodriguez. Her office, really just a corner of the maintenance bay, became an informal counseling center where worried Marines could find someone who would listen without judgment. "She has this way of making you believe you can handle whatever comes next," said Private First Class Thompson, a supply clerk who had been struggling with anxiety. "She doesn't make your problems seem small. She makes you feel bigger than your problems." Maria's leadership style was built on respect and genuine care for her people. She never asked anyone to do something she wouldn't do herself, and she was always the first to volunteer for the most dangerous or unpleasant tasks. When the base's water purification system failed during a particularly hot week in July, Maria spent 3 days crawling through narrow, scalding pipes to identify and fix the problem. When a supply convoy was delayed and rations ran low, she made sure her junior Marines ate before she did. The stress of deployment, however, was taking its toll on everyone, including Maria. The constant threat of attack, the long hours, and the responsibility she felt for her team's welfare created a pressure that built steadily over time. She began experiencing headaches that she attributed to dehydration and lack of sleep. Sometimes she felt dizzy when she stood up quickly, but she dismissed these symptoms as normal consequences of the demanding environment. Maria had always been someone who pushed through discomfort. As a child, she had played soccer with a sprained ankle rather than let her team down. In boot camp, she had completed obstacle courses with injuries that should have sidelined her. This pattern of putting others' needs before her own had served her well in many situations. But it also meant that she often ignored warning signs from her own body. The morning that would change everything began like any other. Maria woke before dawn, as was her habit, and made her way to the motor pool to check on overnight repairs and prepare for the day's missions. The desert air was already warm, promising another day of extreme heat. 3 convoys were scheduled to leave the base that morning, and Maria wanted to personally inspect each vehicle to ensure they were ready for the dangerous journey ahead. The first convoy departed without incident, but the second vehicle in the third convoy developed transmission problems just as it reached the base gate. Maria immediately organized her team to tow the truck back to the motor pool. The mission was critical. They were carrying medical supplies to a forward operating base, where Marines had been wounded in a recent attack. "We're not letting our people down," Maria told her team as they worked frantically to diagnose the problem. The transmission had overheated and seized, requiring a complete replacement. Under normal circumstances, this would be a job for the next day, but Maria knew that the wounded Marines couldn't wait. Working in the blazing afternoon sun, Maria and her team labored for 6 straight hours. The temperature inside the motor pool reached over 120 degrees, but Maria refused to take breaks. She coordinated every aspect of the repair, crawling under the vehicle repeatedly to guide the transmission removal and installation. Her uniform was soaked with sweat, and her hands were cut and bruised from working with heavy machinery in tight spaces. Corporal Williams, one of her mechanics, noticed that Maria was moving more slowly than usual and suggested she step into the air-conditioned office for a few minutes. "I'm fine," Maria insisted, though her face was flushed red and she was breathing heavily. "These supplies need to get moving. Our Marines are counting on us." As the sun began to set, the repair was finally completed. Maria personally tested the transmission, taking the vehicle through its full range of gears. Everything worked perfectly. The convoy would be able to depart with only a 6-hour delay. Remarkable considering the complexity of the repair. But the day wasn't over for Maria. A priority message had come in during the afternoon. A reconnaissance team's vehicle had broken down 15 miles from base, and they needed immediate assistance. The team was in a vulnerable position, unable to move, and rapidly approaching the dangerous nighttime hours when enemy activity increased significantly. "I'll take the recovery vehicle and bring them home," Maria announced to her exhausted team. Several Marines volunteered to accompany her, but she shook her head. "You've all been working since dawn. I need you fresh for tomorrow's missions. I can handle this one." Number one. Captain Martinez tried to convince Maria to let someone else lead the recovery mission, but she was adamant. "Those Marines are sitting ducks out there. I know that area. and I know exactly what they'll need. We can't afford any delays or complications." The recovery mission took Maria into the night. The broken-down vehicle had suffered catastrophic engine failure, requiring her to work by flashlight in potentially hostile territory. Radio chatter indicated possible enemy movement in the area, but Maria focused on her work. She rigged a complex tow system that would allow the damaged vehicle to be pulled safely back to base. The mission was successful, but it required another 4 hours of intensive physical labor. Maria returned to base well after midnight. Having worked for over 20 hours straight, she finally allowed herself to rest, collapsing into her narrow bunk, still wearing her grease-stained uniform. The next morning brought no relief. Intelligence reports indicated increased enemy activity throughout the region, requiring all vehicles to be inspected and prepared for possible emergency deployment. Maria reported to the motor pool before sunrise, as always, but her team noticed that she seemed different. Her usual energy and quick wit were subdued, and she moved with less of her characteristic efficiency. "Staff Sergeant Rodriguez, you look like you need some rest," suggested Lance Corporal Davis, the team's newest member. "Maybe you should take the morning off." Quote. Maria smiled, but there was a weariness in her eyes that hadn't been there before. "Can't slow down now, Davis. Our Marines are depending on us to keep them moving and keep them safe. That's not a responsibility I take lightly." Throughout the morning, Maria pushed herself through routine maintenance tasks, vehicle inspections, and paperwork. She supervised 3 different repair jobs while simultaneously coordinating with base operations about vehicle availability for scheduled missions. Her dedication was unwavering, but the physical toll was becoming apparent to everyone except Maria herself. The heat that day was particularly brutal, even by Afghan standards. The temperature reached 130 degrees, and the metal surfaces in the motor pool became too hot to touch without gloves. Maria had been experiencing intermittent headaches and dizziness for several days, symptoms she continued to attribute to the heat and her demanding schedule. Around midday, an urgent request came through the radio. A convoy that had departed early that morning was reporting mechanical problems with their lead vehicle. The engine was overheating, and they were stranded in an area known for improvised explosive devices. They needed immediate assistance, and they needed someone who could diagnose and fix the problem quickly. "I'm going," Maria announced, already gathering her tools and preparing the recovery vehicle. Captain Martinez pulled her aside, expressing concern about her condition and the dangerous nature of the mission. "Rodriguez, you've been pushing yourself too hard. Let Sergeant Peterson handle this one. You're not thinking clearly right now." Run. And on. But Maria was determined. In her mind, her Marines were in danger, and she had the skills to help them. No one else on the team had her experience with the specific type of engine that was malfunctioning, and she wasn't willing to risk their safety by sending someone less qualified. The recovery convoy departed within 30 minutes, with Maria leading the mission. The stranded Marines were located in a valley known for enemy ambushes, and time was critical. Every minute they remained stationary increased their vulnerability to attack. When Maria arrived at the breakdown site, she immediately assessed the situation. The lead vehicle's cooling system had failed catastrophically, causing severe engine damage. The repair would be complex, requiring her to work in an exposed position while the security team watched for threats. Working under the blazing sun with adrenaline coursing through her system, Maria began the painstaking process of diagnosing and repairing the engine. The work required her to lean over the extremely hot engine compartment, her face inches from metal surfaces that had been baking in the desert sun all morning. As she worked, Maria began to feel increasingly unwell. Her vision became blurry, and she felt nauseous. The headache that had been bothering her for days intensified into a pounding sensation that made it difficult to concentrate. But she pressed on, knowing that the Marines around her were counting on her expertise. "Staff Sergeant Rodriguez, are you okay?" asked Corporal Johnson, who had noticed her labored breathing and unsteady movements. "Just the heat," Maria replied, though she could barely focus on the engine components in front of her. I'll have this fixed in a few minutes. But Maria's body was reaching its breaking point. The combination of extreme heat, dehydration, exhaustion, and the stress of working in a dangerous environment had pushed her beyond her physical limits. As she reached for a wrench to complete the final repair, her legs suddenly gave out beneath her. Maria's collapse sent shockwaves through the convoy. One moment, she was working steadily under the hood of the disabled vehicle. And the next, she was lying unconscious on the hot desert ground. Corporal Johnson was the first to reach her, immediately checking her pulse and breathing while calling for the medic. "Doc, we need you here now," Johnson shouted across the defensive perimeter. "Staff Sergeant Rodriguez is down." Hospital Corpsman 2nd Class Williams rushed to Maria's side, his medical training taking over as he assessed her condition. Her skin was hot to the touch, her pulse was rapid and weak, and her breathing was shallow. The signs pointed to severe heat exhaustion, possibly heat stroke. In the harsh environment of the Afghan desert, this was a life-threatening emergency. "We need to get her cooled down immediately," Williams instructed, as Marines gathered around their fallen leader. "Get her into the shade of the vehicle. I need all the water bottles you can find. And someone get on the radio to base. We need a medevac helicopter out here now." The Marines worked with desperate efficiency to help their staff sergeant. They moved her carefully into the minimal shade provided by the recovery vehicle, while Williams began the process of trying to lower her core body temperature. Water was poured over her overheated uniform, and someone produced a battery-powered fan from their gear. Meanwhile, the radio operator was frantically communicating with base headquarters, requesting immediate medical evacuation. The response was swift. A helicopter was already being prepared, and medical personnel were standing by. But the flight to Maria's location would take precious time, and every minute counted. As word of Maria's collapse spread through the radio networks, something remarkable began to happen back at the base. Marines from every unit, mechanics, infantry, logistics specialists, communications personnel, began gathering at the landing zone where the helicopter would bring her back. They came not because they were ordered to, but because Staff Sergeant Rodriguez had touched each of their lives in some way. Lance Corporal Thompson, the supply clerk who had sought Maria's counsel during his struggles with anxiety, was among the first to arrive at the landing zone. "She saved me when I was about to give up," he told others as they waited. "I owe her everything." Private 1st Class Williams, who had struggled in boot camp until Maria took him under her wing during their deployment, stood silently with tears in his eyes. "She never gave up on anyone," he whispered. "She made me believe I could be a good Marine." The helicopter arrived at the breakdown site 45 minutes after Maria's collapse. The flight medic immediately took over her care, starting intravenous fluids and continuing cooling procedures during the flight back to base. Her condition remained critical, but she was alive. As the helicopter approached the base, an extraordinary sight awaited it. Nearly 500 Marines had assembled at the landing zone, standing in formation without having been ordered to do so. Officers and enlisted personnel, veterans, and new recruits. Marines from every occupation and unit on the base, all united by their respect for a leader who had exemplified the best of their corps. Captain Martinez stood at the front of the formation, his own eyes moist as he watched the helicopter land. He had seen many acts of heroism during his career, but he had never witnessed such a spontaneous outpouring of respect and love for a fellow Marine. The sight of 500 Marines standing in silent tribute to their fallen comrade was something he would never forget. Maria was rushed to the base medical facility, where doctors worked to stabilize her condition. The heat stroke had been severe, and she remained unconscious for several hours. But the medical team was confident that with proper treatment, she would recover fully. Outside the medical facility, the Marines maintained their vigil. They took turns in shifts, ensuring that someone was always present to support their staff sergeant. Stories were shared about Maria's impact on their lives. The time she stayed up all night to help a struggling Marine write a letter home, the day she gave her own food ration to someone who had lost theirs, the countless occasions when she put others' needs before her own. Sergeant Major Williams, the senior enlisted Marine on the base, walked among the assembled Marines, listening to their stories and marveling at the depth of respect they held for Staff Sergeant Rodriguez. In his 30 years of service, he had rarely seen such a demonstration of the bonds that unite Marines. "She never asked for recognition," said Gunnery Sergeant Davis, Maria's immediate supervisor. "She just did her job, took care of her Marines, and led by example. But look around. 500 Marines don't gather like this for just anyone. They're here because she represents everything we aspire to be." When Maria finally regained consciousness 12 hours later, her first words were typical of her character. "Are my Marines okay? Did the convoy make it back safely?" Even in her weakened state, her primary concern was for the welfare of others. Dr. Patterson, the base's chief medical officer, smiled as he checked Maria's vital signs. "Your Marines are fine, Staff Sergeant. More importantly, they're all worried about you. There's quite a crowd outside waiting to see how you're doing." As Maria recovered over the following days, a steady stream of Marines visited her bedside. Each had a story to tell about how she had influenced their military service or their lives. Some brought small gifts, a handwritten note, a drawing, a care package from home that they wanted to share. Others simply came to sit quietly and let her know she wasn't alone. The formal recognition came later. Maria's actions that day, and throughout her deployment, earned her the Navy and Marine Corps Medal for heroic achievement. The citation noted her exceptional courage, sound judgment, and complete dedication to duty in the face of extreme danger and personal risk. But Maria knew that the real honor had already been bestowed upon her by her fellow Marines. The sight of 500 Marines standing in formation, united in their respect for her service and sacrifice, was a testament to the bonds of brotherhood and sisterhood that define the Marine Corps. In her acceptance speech for the medal, Maria's voice cracked with emotion as she addressed the assembled Marines. "I didn't do anything special," she said. "I just tried to take care of my Marines, the same way this Corps has taken care of me. Every one of you would have done the same thing in my position, because that's who we are. We don't leave anyone behind, and we don't give up on each other." Years later, when Marines who served at that remote outpost in Afghanistan told stories about their deployment, they would always mention Staff Sergeant Maria Elena Rodriguez, not just as the Marine who collapsed in the line of duty, but as the leader who showed them what it meant to serve with honor, courage, and complete dedication to others. The 500 Marines who paid tribute to her valor that day carried her example with them throughout their careers, inspiring the next generation of Marines with stories of a small woman from Texas who had a giant impact on everyone she met. Her legacy lived on in every act of selfless service. Every moment when a Marine chose to put others first, and every demonstration of the values that make the Marine Corps more than just a military organization. They make it a family, bound by honor and mutual respect.